Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Dave. I thought I would do a review, not quite sure how long it will take, of the SDRplay RSP2 software-defined radio. Now, I've only had this for a couple of days, and I've effectively only had one evening using it, so I'm a little bit green. But I was so impressed with it, I thought it was worth putting a quick video together because, yeah, it's just great. It's great. I mean, I've been into radio all my life, really, and it's what I do for a living. I'm a digital design engineer working on radio receivers. So yeah, but well, like a lot of guys that are into radio, I took my amateur license. In my case, late 80s, early 90s. I was into 2 meters, 70 centimeters with quite a few guys I used to work with. But over time, I never really got too much into transmitting or radiating. I've on and off done some receiving. I quite like scanning bands and seeing what's out there. To that effect, I bought myself an ICOM ICR 7000 desktop receiver a few years ago, which is obviously quite an old but classic receiver, and it was great. Scanning up and down the bands. It's got some presets. It can do some searching, but I always felt that there was probably a lot more out there to listen to and to get interested in, but I was a little bit frustrated. I could never quite work out where to find it, even having bought books on where everything is supposed to be. It's actually still quite difficult to find things, I find anyway. So this software-defined radio has completely changed everything. It's completely changed the way that you can look at the band or a band or whatever you want to look at, to be quite honest. So I'm not going to go around every single button because there's a very comprehensive manual which covers pretty much everything, and there's a lot of stuff on the internet where people are sort of saying this button does this and this button does that. I just thought I would quickly go around the panes or the main the main functions, and then sort of do a little bit of what I was doing last night, which was hopping around finding interesting things to listen to. So it's really sort of rekindled my enthusiasm for receiving, but it's also surprised me, made me think, maybe I ought to think about radiating again and actually get something that will transmit rather than just receive. So anyway, let's say it's so what you actually get when your order arrives doesn't actually look too impressive on the face of it. It's a small plastic box with a couple of 3 antenna inputs and a USB connection, and it could essentially be anything really. Now, so what you've actually, I'll go through quickly what my sort of definition of a software-defined radio is in the context of this product. The little plastic box you receive is effectively part of, but not the whole radio. It's the sort of front RF front end and sampling. So it's you've got 3 antenna inputs, 2 sort of general purpose antenna inputs. One is one you can phantom power for a remote LNA, and the other one is just standard general purpose input. And then the third input is a sort of 1K high impedance input, which is the one I'm currently using. And I'm not even using a proper antenna here. I've literally got about 15 meters of bell wire, which I've strung out last night and tied to a fence post. No earth, just popped it into the P input on the high Z input antenna, and it's working amazingly well. So if you had a really good setup, I can imagine this will even really shine. So this box is effectively sampling, takes the RF input through a proper RF front end, excuse me, with some notch filters, switched attenuators, switched other usual sort of RF front end filtering, and then into what looks like a chipset. I'm not too familiar with the chipset, but it goes into a chipset. And then ultimately the box produces a USB output which comprises of IQ complex samples. So yeah, it's a sampler basically. The samples come out at various different rates depending on how you got it set up, and then the really sort of software-defined bit starts. The samples are fed into a PC, or I think some guys will even use Raspberry Pis or a Linux box or whatever you've got that's got enough grunt to process the data. And then you have this software setup that you can currently see on the screen. So you invoke it. It's a program. It's software running on, in my case, an i7 machine, 4-core i7 machine with about 16 gig of RAM. It's not a particularly high-end machine. It's not pedestrian either. It's one I put together last year for under £500. So yeah, and that's the software defined bit. So the radio, as we kind of know it, is actually running in software on the PC. So we'll just quickly whip around these panels. This is pretty much how it comes up when you first evoke it. I've iconized a couple of the lesser used panels just to not clutter it too much, and also I wanted to just display the PC performance meter in the top right hand corner, which you can see is running at about sort of 10 or 11%. So it's not, the PC's not really trying very hard. And some of that is not the software defined radio, it's just normal Windows background clutter sort of burning up horsepower. So we got in the top left hand corners is a panel which shows us that we have one radio currently defined, one virtual radio as it's termed. You can have multiple virtual radios. I mean, I've just got one, but I mean I have had 4 or 6 of them running, and you're only really limited by what your PC is capable of processing. So providing you operate within the same band, obviously, because there's only one box, so only one input sample set, you can have multiple virtual radios processing different parts of the band, doing AM, FM, upper, lower sideband, whatever you want, and you can flip between them. So you just add virtual radio and then another whole set of panels comes up, and you can set that virtual radio up to do something completely different. Under here we got our antenna select, antenna A, antenna B. As I say, antenna A and B are essentially the same general purpose input type, but the antenna B can be as a bias T, so you can it's 4.7 volt phantom powered, so if you've got a remote antenna amplifier LNA, you can power that. And then you've got the high impedance, high Z input, which is the one I'm using because I'm just using a sort of basically a bit of wire, a bit of wet string. And then over here you can sort of add and subtract radios, and you can lock or unlock the LO. Currently, because it's just powered up, my LO and my receive frequency are in fact the same frequency, which is possibly not such a good idea because of the DC cancelling. You might want to offset the receive frequency from the LO so you don't end up cancelling the signal you're actually looking at or want to look at. So you can stop it, so it's now stopped dutifully, and then you can start it again, and off it goes. Now this is the sort of main panel here, which looks a bit like what you would expect to see on a sort of a conventional, say, desktop radio. So there's your frequency, so in the center panel there. And then you've got, it's very intuitive. I mean I've been sort of out of this for a while, and I was never really in it that heavily in the first place, so you know, even with a rudimentary knowledge of radio and receivers, this is all quite simple to, relatively straightforward to work out. And to be fair, when you change settings and bands, the software sets pretty much everything up you need anyway, so you don't sort of have to swap bands and then sort of go around pushing lots of little buttons to get things to work. It just works. So I mean I particularly, one of the main reasons I got this, because I wanted to sort of get into listening to the HF bands, you know, and my Icon current receiver, you know, didn't cover the HF bands, so I started looking at HF receivers when I found this, I mean this goes from 10 hertz to 2 gigahertz, so I mean that pretty much covers everything I'm going to ever want to look at. So yeah, so you got most of your setup here, your traditional radio setup. You've got this nice little what looks like a calculator keypad over here on the right hand side with the signal strength meter. And then you've got these buttons with sort of, you know, 15, 12, 10, 17 up to 160, which are your amateur bands, you know, 80 meter in meters, so 40 meter, 80 meter, 20 meter. I mean, I've selected 40 meter because it was one that I was quite interested in looking at. And when you select the band, it sets it pretty much all up for you. So I mean, in, say for example, upper and lower sideband being generally below 10 meg, upper being generally above 10 meg. So if you select something below 10 meg, it will select lower sideband for you and upper sideband. If you want to listen to some FM, it will you've got narrow FM or wide FM, and then it also, for me, I selected the 40 meter band, and it's selected a suitable selectivity filter, 2800 selectivity filter, or you can obviously change that. You can change the step, so as you spin your mouse wheel, the frequency will change. I mean, it's gone to 250. I kind of like 100 hertz, so I've changed that to 100 hertz, especially for sideband, so you can nail it and get, make it sound right. So then you've got this panel here, which is a memory storage panel. You can store, I don't know, everything you can think of if you want. For example, if I just hit store here, put it in the wrong place, hit store there it's stored the frequency and all the other setup as well, and you can store them in different places and call them different things and make libraries of frequencies for different bands. I mean, a whole raft of stuff that I haven't even scratched the surface of yet. And then if you want to, and once you've got a frequency on it, you just click on it and then it all just goes to that frequency and sets itself up into the right mode, and it's great. It's really flexible, so I haven't even started on it yet. This panel here is the auxiliary spectrum. That's the word I was looking for. Auxiliary spectrum panel. So this basically shows the demodulated output after the selectivity filter. So if we go down and look at the main spectrum panel here, you can see the red line, which is the frequency we're looking at, in this case 7150, and then the slightly bluey grey area below it is its lower sideband, selected by the 2800 selectivity filter. And then what we're looking at in the auxiliary panel here is the demodulated output. So that's all good. And then here we have the main spectrum window. So then this is where it gets kind of interesting, or where I think it gets interesting. We're looking here at the whole of the 40 meter band. This is the entire band. So I just hit 40 meters up here and it's centered it at 7150, and we're looking at, if we look up in the top left hand corner, 2.64 megahertz wide. So that's everything from 7 meg to 7.3, give or take a bit, before the band rolls off. So or before the radio rolls off. So that's the whole of the 40 meter band in a 1R. Now you can change that bandwidth. If you go up here and click on there, you can have up to 10 meg wide. So you can display 10 megs of bandwidth all in one go. So that's the real, for me, that's the real power of this. It's so graphical. I don't know if the word pictorial or whatever you want to call it. All this activity going on, all these all these spikes that are jumping up and down here. For anybody that's not seen a spectrum, this is like a radio spectrum analyzer. Basically, this is essentially a spectrum analyzer. All these spikes, these are guys, or a lot of them, not all of them. A lot of these are guys out there on the 40 meter band, CQing, DXing, whatever you want to call it, shouting for contacts, and that's their activity. Now, the other really powerful thing about this, which is something I'd not come into contact with in the past, I'd only ever seen it on sort of videos and stuff, but never actually used it, is this notion of these waterfalls. So this is effectively the residual activity going as the screen's scrolling down. That's the residual activity of the spectrum. So, and it's just color coded. So higher amounts of activity show up as pinky red, and low activity is more bluey dark, going to black, which is sort of noise floor type stuff. So you can see where all the activity is, and you soon learn what looks like audio and what looks like CW, and it's quite intuitive. You soon get the hang of it. But the real power of it is that you're looking at what's happened in the past. So not only you can see what's happened now, but you can see what's happened in the past, and you can change the rate at which you're seeing it. So say you go off and, I mean, it's just a daft example, so you go off and have a cup of tea or something, or go and use the toilet and come back, and all of a sudden there's a big patch of pink traveling down the screen. You can say, oh, that's an interesting contact, and you can click on the edge of that pink. You can click anywhere on this whole window here, and even though there might not be any signal there, there was signal there. So you click on the edge, and you bang on. So when the should the operator come back online or come back and retransmit, your position preemptively to hear them. So you're not only you don't have to look for them, but you can select them even when they're not transmitting, based on the fact that they were transmitting, if that kind of makes sense. So well, let's just select something. I mean, enough of this sort of wittering, and now I've got to try and prove that it does what I say it does. So well, let's click on this. There's some quite a lot of activity here in the sort of center of the band. We could get lucky, maybe we don't. So let's click on that there, and then obviously we're looking at the whole band here, so it's quite compressed. So we can zoom out. I always get these buttons the wrong way around. So we zoom out or zoom in, depending on which way you want to look at it. So there we got some activity here. Now I'm muted at the moment, so I could actually, so you could hear my witterings. So if I unmute, let's turn the no idea what he's saying. So let's just have a little scan around. So here's some activity over here. See, I've moved it and click. Let's click here. So we're slightly off frequency there. 100 Hz steps. That's better. So there's some activity. I don't know what this is. This is quite a large. Slightly off frequency by 100 Hz. Wrong way. Right. So now we're on frequency. It's so easy to get on frequency. So that's his opposite number you can hear there talking. So give him a second, and then the stronger signal will come back. So it sounds there's quite a lot of quite a lot of users that are not based in the UK operating at the moment. There's even more activity now than there was last night. Where's he gone? Wait, there he is. French. So if we zoom back out a bit more. Oh, wrong way again. Why can't I get those buttons right? Over here there's some activity. Slightly off frequency again. Okay. But okay, so let's just I'll demonstrate something else. So often at the bottom of the band, there's usually quite a lot of CW activity. So I'll zoom right out. We'll go all the way down here. So right down to the bottom of the band, just at 7.06 meg. And if you zoom in, it'll snap to the cursor and zoom in. So we're still in lower sideband mode. So we've still got a really wide selectivity filter for CW. But so we've actually got two CW signals within our selectivity filter there, which is what is making a really weird racket. So let's go up here and we'll just flick to CW, which will put in a 500k filter. So obviously we've lost it because we click on the signal, and there we got a really clean CW signal now, sitting in a nice narrow CW selectivity filter bandwidth. And you can just flick about. So there's one there that's active, or he's just disappeared. So I'll show you here. See that little bit of pink down there? That was where he was. So I just click on that pink there. So he's not there at the moment. I'm preempting him coming back. Maybe he will, and maybe he won't. Give him a second. Probably won't now, just to spite me. See that little bit of pink there? See, if I just click on that little bit of pink, got him. So even though he stopped transmitting, I can click on that pink, preempting him returning. And he's not going to come back now, is he? But you get the idea. So what I did last night, hang on a minute, I'll just mute this. I wasn't actually going to originally do this because one of the really cool things you can do is you can save the IQ sample stream from the receiver, from the front end receiver box. And I don't mean save the audio of somebody you happen to be listening to, but the actual IQ stream from the receiver box. So once you save that and you play it back into the software-defined radio, you can recreate the complete band conditions that you were listening to at the time. So I did that last night because there was quite a lot of activity. One guy in particular was quite interesting, and he was getting a lot of contacts all over the States and all over Europe. So I'll demo that. So basically, what you do is you go. We don't have to stop it, but I'll stop it for the sake of it. There's a sort of a button marked OPT or opt at the top, options at the top, and you can select input. So at the moment we've got SDRplay RSP selected, which is our box, but I can select a WAV file, which is one I created last night. So there is SDR Uno, and it was last night. It was quite late. It was somewhere around about midnight. There was quite a lot of activity, and I say it was my first chance to use it really. So I select that. Right. So it's selected that. Now there's a little recording panel. This is all really easy to. I mean, I know I'm sort of clicking around quite quickly here, but it is so easy to use. So this little recording panel allows you to record and then play back stuff. So you can see there it's loaded this file, which is quite a big file. It's almost a gig. It does. You be warned, depending on your bandwidth. 15-20 minutes of recording can easily burn a gigabyte. So yeah, you need some disk space, but disk space is cheap as chips nowadays, isn't it? So there we go. So if I hit play, and then let's zoom right back out, going the wrong way again, Dave. So this is the 40 meter band at midnight last night. Now the guy in question was kind of around about here somewhere. Just bear with me a minute while I sort of find him. Oh, let's turn the mute off, that might help. Oh, I've gone to 10 hertz for some mad reason. Hang on. Let's wait for him to come back a second. There he is. Turn him up a bit. Oh, I'm still in CW. I do apologise. I wonder why I couldn't hear a thing. I forgot to switch back from CW. My apologies. I was thinking, why can't I hear anything? It's smart, but it unfortunately doesn't stop pilot error. Right, hang on. Making a pig's ear of this, aren't I? Here we go. He'll come back now. Right, I've got him now. Sorry about that. So this guy's based in Rome, or just outside of Rome, and he's currently chatting to a chap based in Chicago. And then he drops this guy after a quick chat, and then the next guy he picks up is in the Caribbean, I believe.
Okay, Mike, thanks very much for 59 from 50 miles south from Chicago. I haven't been there. I haven't been in New Buffalo. In New Buffalo, then I remember I took a train and we went to Chicago.
So hang on, I'll just mute him a second. So I started listening and then I forgot what I'm doing, even though we did this last night. So in terms of all these windows, they're all quite scalable. So for example, depending on you can pop this little window up here, and this will allow you to you can change the range. So depending on your signal strength, you can see that the dBm value on the left hand side of the screen is compressing and expanding as I change the range. So you can effectively change how big the signal looks on the screen. And then you've got the spectrum base, so you can sync the whole spectrum or lift the whole spectrum, which is just a graphical thing, but you can sort of stick it nicely in the middle of the screen so you can see everything. And you can do the same with the waterfalls as well, so you can change the color schemes, the speed at which the waterfall falls. So for like CW, if you get the waterfall speed just right, you can actually see the dots and dashes on the waterfall, which is kind of nice. I mean, it's all very, very configurable and extremely intuitive and very stable. I mean, a lot of software isn't stable, and I've used this for several hours now, and I haven't noticed it do anything crazy, hasn't crashed or crashed anything else. It's I take my hat off to the guys that have developed this, because it's really, really good. I'm very, very pleased with it, and for the money. I think I paid about £120 plus the VAT or thereabouts. Anyway, it was about £150 delivered, and it was next day delivery in the UK. When you look at the functionality you have here, compared with say a normal desktop radio, and it is not just the functionality. That's the whole point. It's not just the functionality. It's the usability and how much how interesting it is to use. For me, compared with a desktop radio, it's just like chalk and cheese. So and I say I can see why this would be really useful if you were somebody that was transmitting or radiating. You could look at a band and you can see all the activity on the band, and then choose where you want to transmit. And it is also possible for this software or plugins for this software to directly control a transceiver, so you can click a particular point on the SDR, and it will then tune your transceiver to that frequency, so you can just choose which contact you want to try and just click and go. There's so many different things you can do. There's lots of plugins for digital decoding, CW decoding, setting up virtual audio pipes for connecting the audio output of this into the audio input of third-party decoders. I mean, it's just an endless list of stuff to play with. A lot of fun for the money. Anyway, what else can I say? If anybody's got any questions, I know I've wittered on for probably half an hour now. I do apologise, but I am very impressed with it. And I think if you've got a little bit of extra money and you want to buy something to have some fun and really rekindle your interest in, certainly in receiving, if not more, then I couldn't recommend this product more, really. It's just great, brilliant fun. Any questions, fire away. If I've made any mistakes, which I probably have, because it's been a long time since I've looked at any of this type of thing, so if I've made any hammy type mistakes, then I apologise. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll post the link to their website. I've got no connection with the company at all, so I'm not being sort of paid for making a video or anything. I just think it's a great product, and if it's a great product, it should be promoted, and then hopefully it'll just self-promote. Anyway, thanks for watching. Cheers.